Hey, what's going on, guys? Today I'll show you a horror thriller film named Viking Wolf. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with a police officer named Miss Officer, moved to a small town with her family due to her job change. Her daughter, Thale, was 17 years old and she quickly made new friends in the town. She secretly took beer from the fridge and apologized to her deaf and mute sister in sign language, explaining she was going out with her friends for some vacation and couldn't bring her sister along. Their mother instructed Thale to be home by 11 p.m., to which Thale casually agreed before speeding off on her Tesla bike to her destination. A classmate named Jonas led her around where they encountered a gathering of young people who were high and dry. Among them was a girl named Elin who seemed to hold a grudge against Thale. Elin intentionally called Jonas away, leaving the embarrassed Thale behind. With no other choice, Thale picked up her bag and walked into the forest. She didn't want to go home and face her stepfather, so she wandered outside until nightfall. Unexpectedly, she saw Jonas and another person talking under a bridge. Thale quickly turned her back, not wanting to pry into their private conversation. Suddenly, she heard Elin scream like a chicken. She hurried over to help the injured Elin, but suddenly, a ferocious beast charged at them, dragging Elin's sexy body back into the forest. Jonas stood motionless nearby, his body covered in blood. Since Elin was the daughter of the town's mayor, the police and reporters quickly arrived at the scene. Upon learning that Thale was there, Miss Officer immediately sought her daughter to gather information about the incident. However, Thale was too shaken and could only shake her head and cry. At that moment, the police made a discovery. They found Elin's cell phone and a severed beast finger not far away. The next day, Thale finally regained her composure. She was unclear about the identity of the monster from the night before and couldn't provide any more information. The police then went to the school and questioned each student, not wanting to miss any clues. However, the interviews yielded little information. Even Jonas, who had been with Elin, couldn't describe the attacker's appearance due to the darkness. Miss Officer could only pin her hopes on the severed finger they had found, which was determined to belong to a wild wolf after examining various sources. After the search, Elin's body was discovered. Her body was covered in scratches and bite marks, her right arm completely torn off. It clearly wasn't the work of a human, but it didn't seem like a wolf either, as there were significant differences in bite marks. The doctor handed Miss Officer the contact information for a predatory animal expert, hoping they could help. The police immediately contacted the expert, and while waiting for his arrival, a mysterious old man named Oldie sneaked into the morgue and lifted the white cloth to examine the bite marks on Elin's body. The next morning, Oldie went to the police station to report the incident to Miss Officer. He claimed that a werewolf attacked Elin and that he had been hunting the creature since he became an adult. The police had to catch the werewolf and sever its bloodline before the infection spread. But Miss Officer didn't believe his story, thinking that Oldie was talking bullshit and intentionally disrupting the investigation. So she scolded him for wasting their time. Oldie, however, had a good temper even though he's old, and told her that he lived in the camping area in case she would like to find him later. He advised her not to overlook the stone cave if she wanted to catch the werewolf. He also gave her a bullet, claiming it was the only weapon to stop the creature. He then secretly stuffed an entire box of bullets into Miss Officer's coat before he left. Meanwhile, Thale received a message from Jonas, who wanted to meet her and talk. The two met at a coffee shop, and as the only two witnesses at the scene, they both felt guilty about Elin's death, and were deeply immersed in the fear of that night. As Thale left the coffee shop, she was stopped by a group of boys who shared the rumor that Thale was supposed to save Elin, but abandoned her at the crucial moment. Already feeling guilty, Thale became even more distressed. Thale left Jonas and rushed back home. She had scratches on her shoulder, and the pain from the wounds felt like a thorn continuously piercing her heart, making it impossible for her to forget Elin's tragic death. Miss Officer wanted to comfort her daughter, but Thale rejected her, clearly still resentful about her parents' divorce. Thale retreated to her room, dreaming of drifting in a lake, only to be awakened by the sudden sound of her alarm clock. She then rushed to school. Coincidentally, the day's lesson was about the Fenrir wolf. The teacher was enthusiastic, but Thale's mind wandered. She noticed that her hearing had become extremely sharp, picking up even the slightest sounds. Thale left the classroom and hid in the restroom to calm herself down. She heard someone crying in a stall and cautiously approached. The door creaked open, revealing the amputated Elin crying, asking why she wasn't saved. But this was just an illusion. Thale still ran out of school, lying on the ground, unable to escape the shadow of Elin's death. On the other hand, the animal expert arrived at the police station. He carefully examined the bite marks on Elin's body and the severed animal finger found at the scene, confirming that a wolf had killed Elin. However, the size of the wolf was unusually large. With the expert's determination, the police were finally able to apply for a hunting permit. The hunting team immediately began their operation. Led by a hunter, they ventured deep into the forest. Suddenly, the hunting dog started barking wildly at something ahead, seemingly having discovered something. Following the dogs, they found another headless body. Miss Officer identified the victim from the found documents and arranged for 2 subordinates to guard the body while she continued the search with the others. The dogs sprinted ahead like GPS gadgets, stopping at the ventilation shaft of an old copper mine. Miss Officer took the lead, taking a deep breath before entering the cave. The inside was very dim, with a ladder descending several meters. She accidentally fell off the wooden ladder, landing directly on a human head, which was likely the missing head of the man's body. Meanwhile, the 2 officers guarding the body heard noises and realized that the wolf had returned for the corpse. They were instantly petrified, and a chicken's scream pierced the sky. The officers at the cave entrance quickly drew their guns, and Miss Officer scrambled upwards. The dog broke free from its leash and ran out, only to be killed by the wolf in an instant. Blood splattered onto the cameraman's face. The police chief immediately fired, startling the cameraman, who fell into the pit. Seeing this, Miss Officer hurriedly climbed up, only to find herself face to face with a large wolf. She could even smell the diabetic blood in its mouth. The wolf knocked her off the ladder, and she slammed onto the ground, fracturing her left wrist. The wolf, however, jumped down and approached her. With one hand, she held her gun and fired continuously, but the bullets did nothing to harm the wolf. In the nick of time, she struggled to load the bullets given by Oldie, and with a gunshot, the wolf was finally sent to meet Jesus. Afterward, Miss Officer was taken care of for more than 6 weeks, and the chief suffered severe injuries, now in intensive care. The mayor and Miss Officer tried to reassure the public, explaining that there was a giant wolf in the area that had been killed, and urged people not to panic. That night, the little sister woke up from her dream, only to see Thale standing outside the window with a creepy smile on her face. Feeling something was off, the sister rushed out and led Thale back into the room. Thale seemed to be sleepwalking, completely unaware that she had gone outside. Thale told her sister she had been feeling exhausted lately. The sister communicated through sign language that she would always protect her. Thale hugged her and then fell into a deep sleep like a pig, not a wolf so far. The next day, Miss Officer went to see the expert, as the wolf's body was still with him for autopsy. He looked serious and said that it's impossible for a wolf to survive after being shot 8 times. However, according to the autopsy results, the giant wolf died from the 9th shot, which was the silver bullet given by Oldie. Only this bullet caused massive bleeding and dissolved the surrounding tissue. What's more, the wolf had grown a new claw where its finger had been severed. Miss Officer couldn't help but recall Oldie's words. She immediately took the expert to the campsite to ask Oldie about werewolves. He said that the wolf that was shot dead was a werewolf that had been roaming for a long time. Through his many years of investigation, he learned that the werewolves in Norway might have originated in the 12th century, when a Viking chieftain attacked the region and accidentally brought a mysterious wolf to northern Europe. Humans always wanted to conquer and possess the power of wild beasts, so they conducted various rituals and experiments there. Perhaps in this process, they successfully created werewolves, whose senses became stronger and their desire for blood gradually transformed them into giant wolves, losing their human consciousness until they completely turned into beasts when they could even infect people. Now they worried if anyone else had been infected in this area and realized that they have to exterminate the werewolves to stop the infection. The scene shifted to Thale, who felt unwell and spent almost the whole day curled up in her blankets. Jonas asked her to meet again, so Thale had to sneak out. The two sat in the car watching the night sky. Jonas asked her why she had skipped class. Thale felt touched by his concern and couldn't help but massage him using her smelly tongue. Suddenly, Jonas's father called, and he stepped aside to answer the phone. As Thale looked at the moon, she felt discomfort in her body. When Jonas came back, he saw Thale huddled on one side of the car, baring her sharp teeth at him. The next morning, Thale woke up from her dream and found herself lying on the garage floor. Her face had already started to show wolf-like features. Thale suddenly vomited, spitting out a severed finger. Frightened, she stood up and caught a glimpse of her face in the mirror. Panicked, she fled immediately. Meanwhile, Jonas's body was found by the police. The bite marks on his body had a smaller canine tooth spacing, indicating it was a new wolf. Miss Officer had no idea her daughter was responsible for the killing. At that moment, Thale was watching them from the shadows, afraid to reveal herself and seek her mother's help. She hid until nightfall and boarded a bus leaving the town. However, as the serene moonlight emerged from the clouds, Thale's mutation accelerated. Her hands transformed into ferocious beast-like claws, and sharp fangs emerged from her mouth. Her face and body gradually took on the form of a werewolf. Uncontrollably, she slapped her hand against a window. A passenger felt something was off, and curiously walked over to check. But the werewolf suddenly looked up, turning the bus into a buffet of human prey. The police quickly arrived at the scene after receiving an emergency call. A survivor ran up, shouting that there was a werewolf monster on the bus. Miss Officer rushed into the fog and nervously approached the broken-down bus. Inside, there was chaos. Everyone who could run had fled for their shitty lives, leaving behind bloody remnants and some smelly hormones. However, the monster had disappeared. The expert received a lab report confirming human DNA on the werewolf's body, and this was also reported to Miss Officer immediately. She then found her daughter's clothes and watch on the crashed bus, realizing the massacre was Thale's doing and her daughter had mutated after being injured. Later, werewolf Thale rushed home and approached her sister, roaring loudly and baring its sharp fangs. However, with her remaining human consciousness, Thale didn't attack her sister. Her stepfather sensed a wolf in the house, grabbed a table lamp, and attacked it. He took the sister and fled to the car. He smashed the window, unlocked the door, and shook off the giant wolf, fleeing the scene like a veteran. But his wrist was cut by the broken glass, and he soon passed out from blood loss. The car crashed into the roadside and was forced to stop. He told the little girl to hide quickly. Passers-by who heard the car crash came out to see what was going on, only for the giant wolf to leap out and knock down the person in front. It went on a killing spree, biting innocent bystanders on the street. The sister carefully got out of the car and walked straight towards the wolf, who was biting people. Crying and using sign language, she recognized the werewolf as Thale and told her sister that she will always protect her. The giant werewolf stared at the little girl in confusion as Miss Officer finally arrived on the scene. She pointed her gun at werewolf Thale, who flexed its teeth and growled like a goose. The expert seized the opportunity to shoot a tranquilizer dart at her. Seeing this, Miss Officer grabbed the sister and fled. The three of them hid in a nearby shop, urging the girl to find a hiding place. The werewolf peeked its head around the door, and just in time, Oldie arrived in his old car. The two realized the car's headlights were on and quickly moved out of the way. After a strong collision, the werewolf still did not die. It lunged at Oldie, trying to bite him, then turned towards Miss Officer on the ground and viciously bit her wrist. Fortunately, her wrist was protected by a cast. The expert was injured from the impact and struggled to reach the tranquilizer on the ground. Seeing this, the little girl bravely stepped forward, grabbed the syringe, and stabbed her werewolf sister with it. The werewolf was finally subdued. Afterward, Miss Officer looked at her werewolf daughter. She tearfully said goodbye to her and loaded a silver bullet into the chamber of her gun. In a flash, the scene switched to Miss Officer sitting in Thale's bedroom. She took out the silver bullet from her pocket. The movie ends there, which suggests that Miss Officer probably did not kill Thale, indicating that the werewolf bloodline was preserved, and it would inevitably stir up new turmoil in the future. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.